Alright, fine. So let us start with TestNG. TestNG is a unit testing framework. Alright, and it can be used in Selenium to build the test cases. Till now we have just been writing plain Selenium code in the main function. We were not seeing how to build the test cases, pass them, fail them. So that is done through TestNG. The first thing is that you have to install TestNG as a plugin inside Eclipse. Okay, so for that you open up Google and go to type over here TestNG Eclipse. Okay, and you go to this link. Go to the first link which is there. Okay, you have to install TestNG inside Eclipse. Alright, and you copy the URL. This is the URL. Okay, copy the URL, go to help, install new software. Okay, paste the URL, hit the enter button, and in some time you will see in your machine, if you hit the enter button, it will load up. It will take some time and you will see TestNG coming up over here. Select that, click on next, and okay, it fetches everything from the server. Okay, so it takes a little while, and once it's loaded, you click next, your Eclipse will be restarted and TestNG will be installed as a plugin. You can go to Window, Show View, and in Other, under Java, you will be able to see TestNG. If you see this, that means TestNG has been installed as a plugin. Now, how do we use TestNG to build the test case? Okay, let me make a new Java project for that. Day 14 TestNG. Okay, inside the source folder, I'll make a new package. A package is like a folder inside a folder. Okay, test cases package. Fine. And I'll make a new class inside this package known as say book ticket test. Suppose there's a test case in which I have to go and maybe book a plane ticket or a train ticket, anything, right? So in TestNG we don't have the main functions. Okay, main function is not there in TestNG. Alright, what we have is like we have annotations in TestNG. Alright, annotations um, like this, that is, you can write @test public void search flight. Okay, so this @test is known as an annotation. Okay, if you move the mouse over there, it will give you the option to add the TestNG library. Alright, you add the TestNG library and TestNG will be added as a library in the project. You will be able to see it. It will be having the jar file for TestNG. And then you move your mouse again and you will see the option to import the test annotation. You import it. Okay. @test means that this test case or this function is basically a test case. Fine. Inside it you can write your Selenium code. Alright, I'll just print searching flight. And if I run this, you can run this with a normal run button as a TestNG test case. Okay, you will see that in the console out here, it will simply say that total test runs are 1, failures are 0, and skips are 0. And if you look at the output on the top, okay, right, it's printing searching flight over here, and there will be a tab, this TestNG tab over here, results of running the book ticket test. Alright, if you open this, you will see that this will go in green over here. This is a pictorial representation of what happened to the test cases when they were in running. Okay, and this thing over here clearly says that the test case has passed. The green color clearly says that the test case has passed. Alright, now you can have another @test annotation function, public void book flight. Okay, system.out.println, you can print over here book a flight. Alright, you can have multiple @test annotation functions. I'm sorry. So you can write over here a function like make a payment, and inside it you can type make a payment for flight. So in the search flight, you'll search the flight, then you'll book the flight, and then you make the payment. Right, if you run this, then all the three tests will run. There is no main function. TestNG itself automatically calls the @test annotation function, and it considers them as a test case. So when you run these, you'll see the output total test runs are 3, failures are 0, skips are 0. And you see that it is clearly mentioned book a flight, make a payment, searching flight. Now this is weird. Book flight is running before making the payment, and in the end searching flight is executed. Now we don't want that. We want that search flight should be executed first, then book flight, and then make the payment. Look, TestNG has got its own order in which it calls the test cases. Don't expect that it will run from top to bottom. No. Okay. Right. So you have to write over here that priority of the test case is 1. You have to prioritize the test cases. Okay. That is, this test case is having 1 priority, 2 and 3. 1 is the highest one. Okay. So when you run this, now they will be executed in the order you desired. Searching for a flight, booking for a flight, and making payment for the flight. You will see all these 3 messages coming in. Alright. I hope you have got my point. Anyone with any questions, please feel free to ask. Okay. Now I'm going to make a new class. Now sometimes you have to fail the test case. Okay, you have to do the validations. Alright, so how do you do the validations? Okay, I will make a Jayapriya. You can write as many test cases in a file, there is no issue. So this is a class validations example. Alright, so out here, suppose I make an @test function known as test app anything. Okay, right. Now in testing, what do? We have an expected value and an actual value. We have to compare the expected with the actual. The expected you will read from the properties file or the XLS file, which I'll tell you in some time that how do you read these files. Okay, the actual value always comes from the application. For example, the title of the page, driver.get title, or something, the text and all. So you have to compare the expected value with the actual value. If you write over here assert, guys, please keep your mics on mute. Alright. So if you write the class assert over here, we'll get the option to import assert from org.testng package. You import it. Make sure you are importing the assert class from org.testng package, not the JUnit. Okay. Now in this assert class, there are a lot of static functions. Alright. There are a lot of static functions. For example, a function like assert equals. This compares the actual and the expected value. If I write over here, actual value is this and expected is this. Both of them are same, so it will pass the test case. Okay, when I run this function will pass the test case. Tests runs are 1, failures are 0. Okay, and if I make a difference out here, if I put a x in the end, I keep the actual value a little different than the expected one. And when you run this, you'll see it will report a failure. And it says that expected was this, but what was found was this. In the results, you will see that this test has failed. Okay. Right, so this is how you fail the test cases. There is one more type of assertion. You can write assert dot assert true. Okay. Now what do you mean by assert true? You have to give a condition and a message. The condition will evaluate to true or false. For example, I write over here 2 greater than 1. And this message is basically the error message. Okay. Now if this condition evaluates to true, then this assertion will pass. How it is used, I'll tell you, but understand how you interpret this assertion. Right. So if you run this, this will pass the test case. Assert true, okay, means that this condition should be evaluating to true. If I write assert true 2 greater than 11, and if I run this code, this will fail this assertion. And whatever error message we are writing will come up in the reports. Okay, you see this error message is printing over here. Okay, it's failing. Now, when is this used? Remember we had seen the function is element present. So maybe you can call the function is element present over here and pass the XPath of the element. Okay, right? And you can give anything over here which evaluates to true or false. Okay, now there is another assert known as assert dot fail. Now, sometimes you are at a scenario or you are at a position where you have to fail the test case, where you know that the test has to fail. For example, there is a link and that link should not be present, but it is present on the web page, and you are sure that because it is present the test has to fail. Or there is a page where you never had to land but you somehow came on that page. You have to fail the test case in that case deliberately. So you assert fail will deliberately fail the test case. You can also use the variant in which you can write any failure message over here as well, the reason for the failure. Okay, and whatever reason you write will come up in the reports as well. When you run the code, it will come up in the reports. You see that failure message? Okay, one thing more, in TestNG, this is the project. If I right click on the project and if I refresh the project, you'll see a test output folder. Inside this test output folder, you will see the file index.html. This index.html file is like it has the reports. Okay, the default TestNG reports. I'll get the path of this file and I'll open it for you. Okay, these reports are not very good. See, it's failing that this test app function is telling you that it is failed. We'll use better reports. This is just for your knowledge that TestNG generates default reports, but those reports are not good enough. Okay, right. So assert.fail will fail the test case deliberately. Now moving ahead, yeah, yeah, you can do anything. Okay. Now at times what happens is that, I'll tell you, if I write any one of these three commands, suppose if I'm writing this command and you print over here A and you print afterwards B. Okay. If you run this code and if the assertion fails over here, this was this, and if you run it over here, then see A will be printed but B will not be printed. If an assertion is failing, the program will stop on that line. The test will stop on this line. Okay. Now, sometimes you don't want the test to stop because you can say that the failure might not be so critical. Suppose you are comparing the title of the web page and it doesn't match, or some text is incorrect on the website. So it's not a critical failure. Okay, that you have to stop the execution of the test. Alright, this is basically hard assertion. Now you can also use soft assertions in TestNG. Okay, I'll make a new class known as soft assertion example. Okay, right. For example, I make a annotation at the rate test. Now there is a class known as soft assert. Okay, you create the object of this class and you write s dot assert equals say a and b. Okay, so this will not stop the execution of the test case. Okay, if it doesn't match, it will not stop the execution of the test case. You can report multiple failures through it. Suppose I write s dot assert equals again x and y. I will, same assertions are there for the functions. I'll deliberately fail the test case. Error message 1. So in this test case, I'm just adding multiple errors. And in the end, it is mandatory to write s dot assert all. This line is mandatory. So all the error messages will come in the reports. Okay, so if I'm writing A over here and B over here, and if I'm running this code, see, it prints A and B both, and it will say that three assertions basically failed. Okay, but I'm not sure why is it giving null. It should not be giving null. Alright, fine. So you can use soft assertions as well to report multiple failures in a particular test case. So we will use this in the framework as well. The other assert is the hard assert, when you are very sure that you have to stop the test case no matter what. Okay, right. Now suppose coming back to book ticket example, in which I was booking the ticket, there were three test annotation functions. Okay, one was searching the flight, booking the flight, making the payment. Suppose some failure happens in the first function. You write assert.fail. Okay, some error or failure happen. So if you run this code, you will see that the first test is passing, first test is failing, the other two test cases, they are passing. And we never wanted this to happen. Okay, because obviously if the first is failing, the other two should not fail, should not pass. They should be dependent on the first one, they should be skipped. So how do you skip the test cases in TestNG? Okay, so you have to make the test cases also dependent on each other. That is, the first test case was having some error, then the other two should not be executed. Okay, so for doing this, you can write over here that this test case depends on methods, and you can write the method name in the array, that search flight, that this book flight function is dependent on search flight, and say make payment is dependent on search flight as well as book flight. So you can put a comma and put the second function name in the array. So if for this function, if this one is failing, then this one will be skipped. And for this function, if any one of the two above function fails or skips, then this will also skip. So when you run this code, you will see that the first function will fail, but the other two will be skipped. Okay, right. So you can introduce dependency, prioritize them, you can do anything. Now there are other annotations as well in testing. Sometimes you have to do something before starting a test, it's mandatory, and before and after ending the test case, it is mandatory to do something, right? So you have annotation functions like at the rate, before test, public, void, say before, or name something like this. Alright, I'll import the annotation and at the rate, after test. Okay, so I will have these two annotation functions and I'll run them and I'll write over here before running the test. Okay, and at the rate after test, this will be after running the test. Okay, so suppose the failure is not happening. Suppose this failure is not happening. Now, if I run this, you will see that before test is executed before running all the three test cases. And after test is executed after all the three test cases are over. So maybe you can, if you want to run all the three tests on the same browser, in before test you can open the browser, in after test you can close the browser. Tomorrow we'll generate good reports. So before running the test case, we can initiate the reports, and after running the test case, we can destroy the reports, or you can complete the reports, not destroy, just flush out the reports. Okay, I'm sorry. So you can do various things. All right. So the order of these annotations, it is predefined. No matter where you keep them in the file, there is a predefined order which runs these particular tests. So suppose tomorrow I don't want to run. Okay, I write over here throw skip exception. Okay, I'll import this. I'll tell you what I'm doing. When I run this, you will see that all the tests are not executed, they are skipped. This skip exception, it skips the test cases. Okay, you can also write it inside the test case function, it will be skipped. If you want to deliberately skip a particular test, and if you don't want to run it, you can use skip exception. Alright, fine. So that's what we do in before test or after test. Now there is another annotation known as before method. Okay, hold on. And after method. Okay, so these are the two annotation functions, before method and after method. In before method, you can print anything. I'll just print before like this. In after method, I'll print after, and when you run this code, you will see that presents you with an output like this. Before and after are printing, before and after executing each test. Okay, right? And before running the test is printed here, and after running the test is printed here. So before method and after method are executed each and every time you run the test case before and after that. So there are things which we can do out here as well. I cannot explain you right now. When we do the framework, you will come to know. Okay, right? Yeah, yeah, yes, fine. Now, at times you have to run a single test case multiple times. Alright, fine. So example, I'll just take a simple scenario. You have a new class known as login test. Make the at the rate test annotation public void to login. You are executing this login test. Okay. Now you import the test annotation. Alright. And you just print executing login test. Now suppose you have to run this test multiple times with different user IDs and passwords. You have to call this test annotation function multiple times with different user IDs and passwords. So it's very simple. Okay, what we do is that we take a two-dimensional array in this case. Okay, the two-dimensional array has got rows, multiple rows, and multiple columns. Okay, right. Every cell has a number. This is 0, 0. This is 0, 1, 0, 2. So every cell has got certain, you know, index. You must be knowing about this. So number of rows in this two-dimensional array are equal to number of times you want to run the test. And number of columns are the parameters. For example, username, password. So for every cell, in every cell you can keep the data for that particular test case, the expected result, anything. Alright, so how do we do that? So there are steps involved in this. The first step is that you have to make an annotation known as at the rate data provider. Okay, public void or public object. So this data provider will return a two-dimensional object array. Inside this, you will make this is very important. Okay, a two-dimensional object array, say 3 rows and 2 columns. 3 rows, the first parameter is rows. That means I want to run the test 3 times. And the parameter 2 columns over here means that there are two parameters in every row. The test case has got two parameters, username and password. So fill your first row, hold on, you can write 0, 0, 0, 1. Then you can fill your second row, 1, 1. Then you can put some other dummy user ID and password. Then third row, okay, and out here you can write U3P. So you can have three rows, and in every row you can have your data. You can write over here return data. So you can return this data array like this. Okay, so later on we'll put obviously the data from the Excel file in this array, but right now you can just arrange it like this. And in the test annotation function, you can write over here that data provider is get data. So the steps are, the first step is that you have to build the data array, the two-dimensional object array under it. Then you have to mention that the data provider for this test case is get data. That is, the data is coming up from this data provider function. And the third and the last is that the number of input parameters in this function should be equal to number of columns. Basically, you have got two parameters, username and password. That's why you have got two columns. So number of input parameters should also be 2. For example, string username. That's it. Now TestNG, it will automatically detect that this is my test case. Okay. It will see that the data provider is get data for this test case. It will go to the data provider and it will read the data. Okay. It will read the first set, second set, third set, and then it will call this test function 3 times. When it calls for the first time, it will call with these two parameters. U1 will be passed in username and P1 will be passed in the password. So every time you run it, it will run 3 times, first with this set of data, then with this, and then with this. Okay. So when I run this code, you will see that in console it will be written total test runs are 3. Okay, in results of running the test, you will see all green. Okay, right. Anybody with any questions? Okay, so it calls the test case 3 times. First with this, then with this, and then with this parameter. And you can write the Selenium code inside this test case, which will probably log you inside the application with desired user ID and password. Okay. Yeah. Hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'll tell you. What if the number of parameters they increase to say 100 tomorrow? Okay. So what will be done in that case? I'll talk about that. Okay, I'll tell you during the frameworks that what you. Okay, fine. Now, uh, we have made these individual Java files. Sometimes you want to run them together in a batch. Okay, you want to run all of them together, right? So for batch running, we use an XML file. Hold on. I'll get that. You can also get that file from me. Okay, I'll get it from here, testng.xml. This is the file. Okay, hold on. Yeah, I've copied and pasted it under the project. In this XML file, you can define your test suite name over here, and then you can mention the test cases. Suppose I write over here login test. This name can be any name. The name over here for the class has to be the fully qualified name, that is the package name test cases followed followed by the name of the test case class. So for example, this is book ticket test. So it will be like test cases dot book ticket test. Make sure that this name is correct. Okay, otherwise it will not run. Alright. So if I write over here validations test, then it will be test cases dot validation example. So all these test cases will run together from top to bottom as mentioned in this particular file. So it will be test cases dot soft assertion. Okay. Now if you run this code, or if you right click on this file, you will see the option to run it as a TestNG suite. So you run it and everything will be executed. Total test runs are 8, failures are 2. So all the test cases will be executed from top to bottom. Okay, right. Login test has executed multiple times. You can take this file from the code on the Google Drive. I'll be uploading everything. Okay. Anybody with any questions?